My name is Peter Elder. I'm the leader of the Republican Committee. I want to welcome you all here tonight to our candidate question and answer session. We are going to be asking our candidates that are here tonight 14 questions and asking them to respond so that you have an idea of what their positions are on issues that may be of importance to Webster and Penfield school district voters. So let me start out with asking the candidates to introduce themselves so that you know who they are. Jen, you want to start first?
Jennifer Fonseca.
Louis Levine.
Richard Frazier.
Excellent, thank you very much. Okay, so you guys want to give a brief overview of your resume, your length of service in Webster, anything like that you think voters would be most interested in who you are?
Go ahead, Richard. Go backwards.
I'm a resident of Webster since 1997. I worked at RGA for 40 years. I've been dealing with the public. I was instrumental in getting union into RGA. I also served on the board of Habitat and the board of the Boy Scouts of America. So I'm really familiar with social, and I'm committed to the community and try to bring better change to that.
I'm a resident of Webster for about 24 years. I'm a transplant from New York City. I may still retain a little of my Brooklyn accent. I generally wear my Yankee cap, not trying to. I gotta be honest, I've not been involved in local politics at all until last summer, last June, when some issues arose with what was going on within the school district. And as I met other people, and especially Jen, come to learn a lot more about what I think are some deficiencies in how the school district operates. And I've really become involved. I'm also an attorney. I work with retirement plans, and being an attorney has allowed me to read through a lot of regulations and to understand exactly how the school board should operate. And as we get through some of the questions, I think some of that information will come out. You can see my viewpoints.
Jen?
So I was born and raised to the age of 18 on Plank Road. Went to Plank North. Actually, I started at that little old Halloween-looking house that's over at the on Old Ridge Road. You know the one I'm talking about? Ridgecrest, I believe, was the name of the school. They had this old, creaky gray house over there for kindergarten with 4 rooms, milk and cookies. But I graduated from Trader. After that, I left to go to college and then joined Peace Corps. Went to Honduras for 16 years before returning with my Honduran husband and kids in 2001, and we raised them here in Webster. I am an educator I think I was born that way, to always advocate for children. I remember my first advocacy was around 1974-75 was when Nestle started giving third world country moms formula, and that just irritated me because knowing that breastfeeding was best, they were trying to make babies dependent on formula that parents or moms could not afford. And I just remember writing letters and posters and bringing that advocacy even into the school over at Schrader Jr. So that kind of tells you how old I am.
All right, Jen, thank you. All right, so let's start with our first question, and we'll go from starting with Jen on this one. What strengths do you bring to the school board?
Well, as an educator of 30 plus years, I have extensive education and training, specifically in utilizing data to drive instruction of how do we use good research-based data that's academic related in order to meet individual student needs. I worked with a company as a consultant for 7 years. Prior to that, I brought a specific research-based program into the Rochester City School District that also utilized this data with kids over at school number 9. specifically pulling out skills where kids were ready to learn. So it identified skills that they already know, skills that they're ready to learn, skills that are too difficult for them. So I worked with teachers across the country and internationally for 7 years on how to bring that data into their instruction to create small groups, identify needs, differentiate instruction, and utilize multiple data points in order to support student academic growth in math, science, reading, writing, as well as just in their behaviors and with their attendance. They don't come to school, they can't learn. Bilingual, I understand that living overseas, I understand the needs of cultural relevant teaching also, as well as acceptance, and the need in this world, in the society that we're in right now, to honor and to look at students and their families and bring those families into the building to celebrate who they are culturally.
Well, I don't have the extensive educational background that...
Which is excellent.
Which is excellent. So I am, again, starting out from a beginner standpoint with regard to involvement in the school district, but I think one of the strengths I bring is that I feel I'm a very fast learner, and over the last several months, I've gotten myself up to speed learning about policies and procedures, and I think Jen can attest to the fact that we've noticed some changes in how the board operates since we started going, at least I started going in June. So I think the quick learner, I have a tendency to think through all the facts and circumstances and before a decision is made, so I think I could bring a level of calmness and not make knee-jerk reactions, especially when it's big policy decisions. I'm not afraid to stand up to the powers that be, even if it may be politically not in the majority. I've spoken at several school board meetings, including one several weeks ago, and called out the board for what I feel is timidity. I think these days we have to show our ability to stand up for what's right and for what's in the best interest of the kids. I'm not afraid to do that, and I've never been one for public speaking, but I've certainly felt that I've fallen into that role recently.
Thank you.
Thank you. What strengths do I bring? Well, I'll be new at this, but I bring some other strengths for dealing with a lot of people in committee. For 3 years, I ran the board of Habitat for Humanity. I dealt with a lot of people, a lot of different groups. I brought them in, and I was within budget. The next thing I brought in was I was board of directors for the Boy Scouts of America. I have a passion for people and strengths and freedom, and I want to be able to bring this to the school board. I want to be able to be there for parents and be there for teachers, and that's what I want to do. And I do have the strength to stand up for people and to be with them, and that's why I'm running for the school board. I was also instrumental in bringing in the union for rights for people to work, and that's my passion, and that's what I intend to bring if I'm elected.
Thank you. All right, so the next question is, what are your top priorities related to your candidacy for the school board?
Sure. I think top on the list is a look at the curriculum that has already started seeping into the school district. New York State's version of critical race theory. I don't know if anyone else has, but I downloaded the materials several months ago and read through it. It's pretty frightening, the language that's even used, and this is a go on this stuff. And I can tell you from I have one son that's still in the school district in 11th grade. I could see some of these principles actually affecting the classroom setting at this point. So looking at the curriculum, seeing what we can do to make sure that information that could be, or training to these children, I call it indoctrination, doesn't find its way too far in there where we're at the point of no return. I think what children need to learn is life skills, and when I read through the materials, that's sort of missing. And we need to get back to the basics so that they know how to handle the obstacles that they're going to face in life. Like the world stage is playing out right now. What happens where you don't have the ability to stand up or overcome obstacles? And I think what's happening now is could be transformational, and we need to step back a moment and look at what is really happening in terms of how these children are being educated. Transparency is another big issue, and I think that'll come through as we go through the questions tonight. I got to be honest, I've tried multiple times to request information through Freedom of Information Act, and I and others have been denied at every turn with this. Multiple foils have gone in over the last several months. I even put one in a few weeks ago. We are being denied anything related to the curriculum that's being introduced, the authors, the materials, anything. Every single request has been denied for information on the resources that are being implemented.
The top priorities would be what they're teaching CRT and 1619, and we have to readjust this to the students. Another top priority is having students involved, and whether they get into sports or whatever they do, we need to do that for our children. And if we need to have supplement for mental health, if we need where children can go and speak to people, we need to do that, because there's a lot that's going on in families now. And if they need counselors, that's what we need. Direct them in that area. Help them with everything they need. Those are the top priorities that we need for these children, to keep these children to grow up safe, and to grow up and to be patriots, and to know the country that we live in.
A lot of top priorities, but I'm running on that I believe schools and the School Board of Education members should be there should be freedom from politics. And I believe that we need to put these children first. Based on that, as Louis said, the lack of transparency that I've seen since hearing what was going on in the schools during the virtual, kids were at home and learning virtually is when everything started to crop up. So I started to do a little research online on the Webster website and couldn't find anything that would tell me about what was happening in the schools and the curriculum, what was actually being taught, like Louis said, even the resources, etc. So I started calling and started emailing, and I wasn't getting answers. And right away I realized there was a lack of transparency. Since COVID, it has also allowed the schools to shut their doors on the community and especially on parents, not allowing them to go into the building and to be part of the classroom and to see what's going on, to sit there, to go and eat lunch with their kids. Each building is, it could be run a little bit differently, but I've been very active in the community since last year. I did try to run for board last year on a late ticket there. I only had a couple weeks to run, only because I saw that there weren't candidates that were willing to go in there to really see what was going on and to, to stand up and be the voice for the kids and for the taxpayers. So that's my, I know I can't save the world. I know I can't save the school district. This is a much more higher power and politics that are playing into it than we can even imagine. I've been pulling parallels to what's happening in education today to what happened when Common Core came in. Do I hear any groans? They're using the same tactics, but even worse, with what they're doing today with today's standards. The Common Core is still there, know that. But it's now putting some of that politics and a lot of politics into the classroom and also into the board. Back when I was in the classroom, you kept your politics out of it. You don't say who you voted for. You don't persuade students to one side or the other. You're here to teach. I want to get back to that. On the board, I think, and I'm probably answering another question right now, but I really want to be able to make sure that the board is transparent. And if they pull any funny stuff like they've been doing right now, I'm gonna let them know from the get-go. You're gonna get a lot of noise from me. I will be the first one, I'll be noisier than the parents in the audience. You know, you're not gonna be able to pull that. Okay?
Okay, did I get everybody on that second question? I think I did, right? So third question. What are areas of improvement and that you can influence? Rich,
Areas of improvement. I think the improvement has to start with the parents being able to go to the school, see their children at lunchtime. That's a big improvement there. The other improvement is for the students. As again, I said, to have other people, not only the teachers, but someone that they can speak with if they're having problems. And they're having problems at home and they're dealing with different things, whether it's abuse, drug abuse or whatever. We need to have this out there for our children to get by. And they need to be able to speak to people, professionals and counselors. Those are areas that need improvement so we can have our children on a straight and narrow path.
Okay.
I'm gonna comment first on the social workers or the counselors that Richard's been talking about. So you know, 2 years ago, Webster hired 3 additional psychologists. And then last year they hired an additional 11 social workers. Actually, it was 10 social workers and 1 psychologist, under the pretense of that the kids were going to come back into the school building, and with reopening we're going to need counseling and services for anxiety, depression, suicide, etc. Back last year when I ran, that was one of my top questions to the board candidates. Why do we need 11 social workers? And how is that going to work? How are parents going to be informed? And replies back to me was, well, they just need to be there. They need to help. I don't know exactly what's going on in the school buildings with these social workers. I will assume that they're being used in a capacity that that they are being used in a positive way for those who truly need it, and that they are working directly with the families and letting families know. But like I said, I've also been watching and going to every single board meeting, workshop. We've been to their executive sessions. We have read and we've gone back and listened to, and I'm referring to we, there's me, Louie, David's here, there's several others that have been watching carefully all year long of what's being said and what's being done. And under the social emotional learning, that is where our school counselors are coming in. So where do I want to see improvements? Was that the question?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I do want to, I want to make sure that these kids are ready for after graduation and beyond. It's not all about every kid going to university. It's about looking at kids and what are their gifts, what are their talents, what are they good at, in order to direct them to become productive members, number one. I also want to ensure that the data that they're collecting is good data for instruction. You may have been hearing, especially at the junior high level, that there was like 145 questionnaire online that was very personal and sexually related, that all kids really across the United States were given. This information was done on a computer, so that needs to be a priority, that all this data collecting on our kids is going into a laptop and being sent with their identification, not just to the school, but it is being driven right up to the federal level. And if you need information and links for that, I will provide those for you. They are also going to the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Baxter has a program to start to identify students and families that might be at risk. I see some value in that, but I also see that it could be an issue. And I'll stop for the
What I would like to influence and think I could as a board member is to increase community input and listen to what the parents have to say and what they think is in the best interests of their children. And I feel that is completely missing from my experience so far. We are lectured for the last several months at the beginning of each meeting, regular meeting, on that this is really not an open forum to ask questions to the board and to address only the board and do not turn around and do not look at anybody. It's a speech at the beginning of each meeting. Late last summer, they actually had the school attorney come in to explain this to us because we were calling them out on things. When I found out that you could actually show up at these executive meetings that aren't the regular meeting, I showed up at school one morning at 8 o'clock on a Monday or Tuesday. I said, why are you here? This is a public forum. I'm allowed to be here, at least for the commencement of the meeting, and to be there at the adjournment. And I felt like I was standing down there for 15 minutes until they probably called their lawyer and said, is this true? And they said, okay, what are you going to do? We just did the Pledge of Allegiance. We have the executive session. I said, I'll wait out in the hallway. I sat out in the hallway for 2 hours. Right? But this is what, I would invite parents to do this and to see what's going on. I would invite discourse. Every FOIL request for information about anything is just denied summarily. This is public information. There's laws that say this should be produced. Why shouldn't I give it to a parent who's asking for it? It affects their children. They have a right to know this. So, I mean, I think philosophy, sunshine is the best disinfectant. Get it out there, let people have open discourse. Everyone has a different opinions, and you try to come to some kind of consensus. But I feel this is absolutely not happening. And the fact that the board started doing remote from the last session until further notice is absurd. I spoke out about this. If you listen to the recording, you can see clearly what my position is on this. Thank you.
Okay, our fourth question is, how would you ensure that open meetings law, right there, is followed at school board meetings? And Jen, you want to start that?
Exactly what Louise said. We found very quickly that they weren't following open meetings. Coog and Albany has become our best friends. We know that we should be at the next step of bringing probably some lawyers in to ensure that they are running these meetings correctly. Where can I ensure that those laws are followed? I've learned a lot now of what is supposed to be done, and will continue to learn of how to include the public at all public open meetings. I encourage every Webster resident and taxpayer, please attend those board meetings. Please attend the workshops. The workshops are actually where you're going to learn what's happening in the schools. They're open about it, and they're blunt about it. So I learned all about their social and emotional learning program in that meeting. And since they never had anybody there before, they weren't prepared and set up so that the audience could hear what was happening. And at that moment, one of the audience said, "Could you please speak up? We can't hear." And we were told they didn't have to, because this wasn't a regular meeting, which was wrong. So it would be going in there and ensuring that the school board is run in a way that's welcoming, that's open to the public, that you know the protocols, what to do in case something happens in the meeting in order to make sure that it goes smoothly. There's a lot there, though.
I know you talked about this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, to ensure the school board meeting, they need to follow the rules. I mean, I feel they didn't even understand what their own rules were when this is clearly information you can look up. And I got to tell you, when we found out we could start going to the executive sessions that aren't the regular monthly meeting, there was one session I couldn't attend. Jen was there. I think there were 8, 10 people. They had
10 of us.
10 of us. They had a police officer or a security officer for every person that was there. I mean, that's incredible stuff. I wish that the community would know what's going on behind the scenes. We're really trying to make an effort to bring this to the forefront, but it's really incredible stuff that's going on. How about direct the superintendent to actually follow the rules as well? I mean, the rules are the rules. How about not voting if you're not eligible to make a vote, or not following the rules that should allow a vote at that time? Maybe that should be followed as well. And if something's not being followed, the Committee on Open Government, COOG, is our friend that we should certainly be reaching out to if we feel that something's not being followed, or something behind the scenes that we're not too clear about.
Ensure open meetings. That's a very good question. Ensuring open meetings, we have to start with the superintendent. And as a board member, you can put pressure on him. You can say, you know, when is your salary due? And when come up for voting, you know, you have to get on them. Otherwise, they're going to just do what they want to do. Also, we have to ensure open meetings, make sure the parents are there, make sure that they know it, and try to stop this online stuff. Make sure that it's followed at all board meetings. If it isn't, then you take them aside and say, this wasn't followed, this isn't correct, you need to do better, or when your turn comes up, I don't think I'm going to support you. I guess that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Louis, the next one would be, how would you ensure parental access to curriculum-related books, reading materials, lesson plans, and other supporting materials?
I would say, how about just make the curriculum and the resources that are being used for the primary purpose of education to be available? Post it on a website. How about if parents are asking for it and it's public information, that we make it available to them? Is there something to hide? I would certainly hope not. Hold discussions with parents, talk to them. I can tell you that I know Jen, during the summer, was trying her best to have meetings with the superintendent, the diversity officers. That was a difficult task, wasn't it? It shouldn't be. Talk about the curriculum. I mean, I know some things, such as individual lesson plans, that may be something harder to do. I mean, there's, in terms of posting that, but just whatever within reason can be made available. Make it available. Again, if it's online or some other, through a formal request, do it. Rich?
How would you ensure parental access to curriculum-related books, number 5?
Well, make sure that they have everything they need online. Make sure that the students are home and tell the parents what it is. And if the parents need to come in and find out, we can do that. And even after a board meeting, if the parents want to speak to us, we'll give them a list of all related books, reading materials, and lessons planned, and make sure that they have them. Make sure that the children are there, and if the work is being done, make sure the parents see that, whether it's online or at a meeting, or even if they want to call direct. I don't have a problem with that. It's all about the parents and the students, and we'll give them what they need to do.
Jen?
So, I fully agree that all these things should just be open record. Parents want to know. It should be allowed. If a taxpayer would like information of what's being taught in the classroom, what resources are being taught in the classroom, it should be provided. Like Louis was saying, if you have something to hide, that makes me very suspicious. We did do foils on all of these things. All of that was hidden from us. It was all denied. We do have to realize, I can see many of us in the room are a little bit older. Many of the materials are no longer just, here's your textbook for the year. So teachers are pulling resources from multiple areas. You know, they're pulling them from library books to online resources. Many textbooks or resources are online and on child's device, etc. So it does become a little bit more difficult to provide everything, especially with the teachers being a little bit more creative and trying to bring in different resources for different levels of reading, different interests, etc. So we have to also go beyond understanding what materials are being used in the classroom, but how is it being taught? What is the final objective and outcome and goal? That is the most important. And now let's bring in what are the resources that are supporting that goal.
Thank you. All right, next question. What changes to curriculum would you favor? Rich, you're up.
The changes to curriculum. They're actually doing changes to children about teaching them about gender and that. We should stick to the other cores that we have, math, history, the rest. These are the curriculums that need to be addressed and need to be changed, in my opinion.
Jen?
I believe, first off, that majority of the teachers still have very good hearts. They're there for the kids and they're there to teach the kids. But we have a culture of change and political change taking place right now in the schools across the country. That's why I'm saying we should be free from politics in our schools. We need to make sure that the kids go back to reading, writing, that they have their basic math at least, if not more, that we're looking at whether a child is going towards trades right now. How many of you tried to get somebody to come paint your house or put a roof on or an addition? We need more people. We need more kids going into the trades. Don't even get me started with my fireplace. But we need more of that. So we need to be preparing our kids of today to take those jobs. Who knows? We might even need to be getting these kids prepared for farming again. We definitely need these kids to be financially responsible. We need to bring in a financial course from an early age. And not just what finances are, but how to do a budget. How to go to school and go to college without debt. On average, oh gosh, it's up so much now, but we are in billions of dollars of debt, college debt today, because kids are being pushed to the college track. And they come out of school after 1 year with $20,000 minimum in college debt and no degree to show for it. So definitely need to start going back to some of the basics.
Louis?
I just want to piggyback off of John with this one. It is true. The financial literacy is actually so important, and I work in that industry for 25 years now, and they come out, you're right, not even checkbooks, balancing anything, how to pay, budget. It's not there. These are the basic life skills you need just to function. So, changes the curriculum. How about eliminate the education that's based on putting people in gender and race and religious groups and teaching from that perspective? That's not how it should work. Okay? Yeah, gender, race, religion, those are important things, but not in the way that it's trying to be implemented. I think that really needs to be looked at.
Our seventh question. Jen, we're going to start you off with, what is your opinion of the State Education Department sustaining cultural response education framework?
So this is a framework you can go right online and pull out. Okay, you can take a look at it. This is the document that is driving their curriculum at this point, to bring in the social justice standards, the social and emotional learning, as well as the comprehensive sexuality education. It's all being pushed through this framework that was created by the New York State Ed Department team. We have the Common Core. Common Core at this point is not going away, but yet you're bringing in this culturally responsive teaching that is and can become very dangerous as it's implemented over time, because it becomes a change in the culture. Some of it is done through lesson plans, but it's done through attitudes and the change of the culture of who we are as a people, of looking through the lens of race, looking through the lens of ethnicity versus based on character. It's not building kids up, it could actually tear students down.
Yeah.
I am not in the building, but I have been very close to many parents and working with parent groups throughout Rochester and Monroe County, and I'm hearing a reoccurring thing. And it could be the curriculum, it could be the masks, it could be the anxiety, but it's mounting. It's creating behaviors within kids that are not desirable. I'm hearing that behaviors are through the roof. And this is something that I addressed the board last spring on, that if they continue under this framework and where they're going, that is not studied, it has no research behind it. They could not provide me, I sat down with Mr. Neenan and asked for the research base behind it. There is none. And I said, we're going to start to see the negative consequences from it, and I think we're starting to see it.
Good.
You know, for the last 2 years, what we've heard about on the news was about CRT or whatever each state calls it, has their own naming convention for. But you know what? I think people throw that it's bad thing around. Why don't you actually read it and see what's in it, and then truly understand that this is a dangerous philosophy and way of, again, it's nothing, it's indoctrination. But I think it's important that you go on the state websites and actually download this and read for yourselves the language that's used in there. Okay? Because if you want to argue it, know what's in there. And again, there's a lot in there that it's just frightening. It's frightening. And I could just tell you this, from my own personal experience, my son, I think it was in February, had a pronouns training. And I guess there was some guest speakers for this. And this kid, he never asked questions in class. And he told me that day, he never even talks about what he does over there. And he's telling me about this class, and he says, I gotta tell you, I asked questions, I was confused like what they were saying. I said, what are they saying? He said, well, effectively they said, if you use the wrong pronoun that somebody wants you to use, it's the same as committing an act of physical violence against them. And that if people use all these different pronouns and you can't get on board with it and know what to call this person, that person, that you should have a pronoun dictionary on you. I said, you sure you've heard this? You don't think it's real, and it is.
Rich?
Well, culture response, there's a lot of culture about the word diversity. Well, diversity is a lot of different meanings. And any speaker that's brought in to speak to the children should go through the board first. There's one right now in Brockport that's going to be speaking, and parents should be totally against that. And the board has to vet these people. We have to vet them before they're going to come and speak with our children, before they're going to do it. We want to know what their curriculum is, what they're about, before they speak. We have to do that. Also, from kindergarten to third grade, they're bringing in people that teach them transgender. It's got to go before the board before they do it. This is not what we need to teach our children. So it's word diversity has to be explained. It has to know what's coming in, and we have to approve any speakers that are coming for our children to teach them.
Okay. Our next question, getting a little more financial here. We're going to start with Louis. 61% of the tax revenue goes to the school district in Webster. What efficiencies would you favor to reduce spending?
Well, to reduce spending, I think what you need to do is to look at all these monies that are involved. There's a lot of money that's coming in, especially some of these federal funds. And to actually look at the granular level, at the budget, and see where the money can be moved around, is what's going to what area. I can tell you this, since we've been involved, I think there's been a lot of money used for legal fees that we seem to need to know where that's going, and security. Make sure that our technology for the students is state of the art. You know, put the money where we know it's going to make the most difference. And have I studied the budget inside and out? No. This is all stuff I'm learning. But I think with my financial backgrounds, there's a lot to figure out and go through. So, like I said, I can't give you the super granular details. You may have been asking for that question. But again, I'm learning this stuff very quickly, and feel like I make a difference in finding out where money is best spent. And again, get input from the community, where the parents think that money should be going to as well. I mean, it's the children and the parents going, get everyone's input, and then you can make the best, most reasonable decisions that provide the biggest bang for your buck.
As far as reducing the efficiencies, as I ran the director of Habitat for 3 years, I had a budget. I had to stick to the budget. And I had to come up with some very creative things. Some things, rather than paying a contractor a huge budget, we tried to get volunteers to come in. What can we do? I also had different ways, and every year I stuck to under budget. We got lumber delivered differently. So there are ways that I could look to have different things come in, rather than having to spend out for contracts for different people. If we have volunteers, if we have other ways, there's other ways to do it. And that's what I would look at for this budget.
Okay, I'm going to try not to go into a big discourse, but you do need to be informed and know a little bit more. So first of all, I'm into personal finance. I coach and mentor women in personal finance. I know school budgets are a lot different. I do have my administrative degree in district and school building administration, so budgeting was one of the big topics. So you have to do it at the school level, and you also have to do it at the district level. You're just working with bigger numbers, with lots of zeros at the end. I've been following very closely over the last several years the budget. And you know, they've always done a pretty good job with the budget, even though every year our taxes go up. Something changed a couple years ago where the kids aren't in school, they're not getting lunches, there, a lot of changes, no transportation, etc. But yet our school taxes are still going up. On top of it, the school received over $14 million in what is they're calling federal funding. So I'm paying very close attention to the school budget as it's being presented in the workshops. They have 4 different meetings going on right now before they accept the budget to propose it to the taxpayers. Your taxes will be going up again. So just some of the highlights from last week's budget meeting will include additional teachers that they're going to be hiring. Our school enrollment has been going down substantially over the last 11 to 14 years. About 500 students left Webster Central School District this year alone. Webster is still reporting on their website that there are approximately 8,400 students in Webster. There are not. Last year, they reported to New York State 8,109. We just kind of looked at that number right before the meeting. And this year, we've asked, they're not giving it, number one, it hasn't been posted. But subtract 500 students, approximately 500, subtract 300 students. We're well below 8,000 students, and your taxes are going to go up because they're going to be hiring more teachers, number one. They're pushing RTI support, which is mandated by federal law, to be used through the federal funding. That should be taxpayer funding, not federal funding, because that federal funding is one and done. What are they going to do next year in order to support that program? They're going to shuffle money around. Okay? They did a nurse study. They looked around and did a comparison around the county and found that we were 4 full-time nurses short than other districts. Doesn't mean that there isn't a nurse in every building. It means that they're hiring 4 more nurses in order to be on par with Penfield, Pittsford, Fairport. Nobody asked the question on the Board of Education. They were Zoom for safety reasons. So they have no public input or questions. Why? What is the reason behind the survey? They said it's going to be partially used through the stimulus money. The stimulus money is this federal money, which you hear is called ESSER money. Okay? That's a one-time use. Last year they did 11 full-time social workers with this stimulus money, this ESSER money. Who's picking up the tab today for those 11 social workers? They can't use the federal money anymore. We are. The same thing's gonna happen with those nurses because they put the certain contracts on 10-year track. 3 years, you're there permanently, they can't fire you. They're in the budget. So my question to them is where are they gonna continuously get this money with enrollment down? And yes, there are some retirements, they did talk about that, but these full-time positions are not replacing, are in addition to those that are retiring. Finally, they are hiring a new director of family engagement and inclusivity. Now, some of that funds, under the ESSER funds guidance, 0.5% of the $14 million could be used for that salary in year one. That is approximately $70,000. No director of family engagement, which is basically an assistant superintendent position, will do it for $70,000. You know it's going to be minimum $85,000 for Webster schools. Next year, that $85,000 plus benefits will be on your dime. So, 61%. We need to go back to the days when we say no more to this federal funding, work within our means. And I think we'd have to ask Tom Flattery of what happened with the police department because I think that went to his budget.
I just want to let you know, she'll call me at 11 o'clock at night out of nowhere to tell me these statistics.
We go to the ninth question. We're going to start with Rich. How would you use the $14 million COVID money?
Well, that's a question that I really had to ponder. The $14 million should be going to, if we need to upgrade for our sports, if we need to upgrade different things, if we need to upgrade training and give the students the latest, whether it's laptops or latest data to use, that's what we need to do for these children.
Jen?
Oh boy, are you in for a treat here? ESSER money. ESSER money comes from, started with the CARES Act, went on to the CRRSA, which is also part of the COVID Relief Fund, and then the final one came with the ARP Act for additional fundings. Like I said, Webster received out of those funds over $14 million. $14,041,404. Okay? Now, what the federal government did was that they gave the CARES money and the CRSSA money, and then they released the first part of what's called the ESSER 3 money. After they did that, and that was back last March, a month later, the federal government came down with guidance on how to spend that money. You must do this with this money. And that's where all of this is coming in, from the masking to possibly vaccinating the kids, vaccinating the teachers, test to stay, to our curriculum, to the CRT, to the SEL, to the social workers. All of that is in the federal plan and is also in Governor Hochul's plan. Actually, yeah, it was Hochul's plan last summer. She also had to create a plan and submit it to the federal government. The school district also had to submit a fund of how to use that money. Now the ESSER funding, they received 2/3 of that final fund before the guidance came down. So at this point, I would say give back 1/3 of the ESSER money and be done with it, and let's take back our district. Is it possible? Probably not, but it's worth a try. I don't think they should have accepted it to begin with, but $14 million is very appealing to any district, but it's going to be digging us a hole. What you don't know is this money is going to keep coming. They have a plan, the federal government has a plan all the way out to 2028, which includes health and safety, as well as the curriculum. But with the money, I would say, give it back. Let's go back to using our money that we get with our taxes. Stay fiscally responsible.
I'm going to sort of stay in the vein of a prior response that any available monies that we can use to make sure that the students have the best resources possible to learn would be a top priority. So Do we need to upgrade laptops, other devices? Also, I had a conversation 2 weeks ago with another Webster resident, and they were just telling me when they found out I was running for school board, is that their child has some special needs additional resources, and that in a meeting with the administrators, just felt belittled and was told that you don't deserve the best, you're not entitled to the best, that, you know, we just gotta make sure we give you this minimum amount. I said, okay, well, first of all, you don't treat a parent like that. But you know what, you look to see what can you give the child to make them successful. Reevaluate what is needed. Again, back to parent input. My older child also required additional resources. And I gotta tell you gotta fight tooth and nail for all this stuff. I mean, you gotta meet with it, you gotta push, it's incredible. So again, if I had to be able to use additional funds, that's the area I would look into.
Okay. Jen, we're going to start with you here. What do you think is a fair rate of increase for salaries?
This is a really difficult one for me because I've been in education, in the realm of education for more than 30 years. And you know how they keep reinventing the wheel? They do that too with salary increases. A lot of it is done through the union. You know, the union fights for the teachers, and of course they go to the bargaining table and come to the middle, etc. So for the school board, you know, they're more the ones that are going to be there to accept what the superintendent did with the teachers union in coming to an agreement based on the business CFO, etc. from the district. I've also been through, you know, looking at increase of salaries based on merit. Done that, you know, even with the Rochester City. Save a buck here or there in order to, you know, not have teachers sick. That happened in Rochester City. You know, they incentivized us for not calling in sick so that at the end you get a lump sum. They're doing that again here with bus drivers, and they haven't, I don't think they've cracked the teachers yet, but with several positions, even through COVID, I would not increase their salaries by giving them an incentive for being in your job for 30 days in a row each month. That's a waste of money. So I think it would be going back to the board with not the Board of Education, but definitely the collective bargaining, since it is unionized, unfortunately, and we would have to play ball.
Louis?
I got to tell you, in this environment, what is a fair increase is actually, it's a very,
Not
very
10%.
difficult question.
Yes,
Because,
it is.
I mean, we're in an inflationary environment now that we haven't seen in 40 years. So that's going to have to be taken into consideration when you're figuring out rate increases. But I think just a basic analysis to look at, compare local, regional, and national rates. And you got to break people out within categories. You got to look at administrative staff, teaching, bus drivers, all that separately, and then do some type of analysis that you have some ability to provide reasonable increases. So it's challenging, but again, the more information you have to make those determinations, the better. And I actually, you know, I drove a bus for when I moved up here. I actually drove a bus, and I got to tell you, yeah, I was fighting for some pay too. But yeah, it's difficult. But again, information comparisons on what others is making. But to a certain extent, that is contractual. But that answers the question.
Yeah, Rich?
Well, that's a good question. It can be done a couple of ways. I think the best way is percentage-wise. Let's go for percentage of graduation. Is it 50%? Is it 60%? Is it 80%? The higher graduation rate should be better increase. It'll give incentive to the teachers to teach more, to get these children out, to get a higher graduation rate. I think that would play a big, big part in the wage increases.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question. We're going to start with Louis. Do you believe that biological males who identify as females should compete in women's sports?
No.
No. That was easy.
I mean, we're seeing it play out, and it's like, I sit back and I go, I just don't understand. I'm looking at that swimmer, Leah Thompson, and it's been on the particular last few nights because of the NCAA's swim championships, and I'm looking, this person's 6'1", is dwarfing everyone else, and biologically is a man. I mean, the harm that you're doing to women is just, it's incredible. Could you imagine that this is your passion? You go to school, you're on scholarships, you love competing, and you have that disadvantage. It's amazing. It's amazing. So no.
Yes, no, thank you. All right, yes, okay, thank you all, we're very clear on that.
No.
All right, so-
Why is it allowed to happen? Like how did this happen? I don't understand. Why did NCAA decide to allow this?
That's
Good question, because they are trying at the federal level to bring it in through the Equality Act. Is that the name of it?
Yeah.
The Equality Act? But it hasn't pushed through yet.
Right. I think that's a good question in a different venue. but-
Yeah.
Okay, so next question. I'm going to start with Rich. How would you ensure the best candidates are hired for employment with the district?
Well, that's a good question. I think we need to vet them. We need to find out what their past was, what they're doing, why they're applying for the jobs. I talked to one school board member, and he said they vetted someone, went in there, and he said, what was your past? Well, I guess he had a history and children, and we don't need to do that. So we need to vet these people. We need to know what they're doing. Are they there just for the money, or are they really concerned about the children and what they want to do? So vetting them will be the way that we're going to get the best candidate. And we don't need to hurry it through because we have a vacancy. If we have a vacancy, we want the best candidate there. If it takes choosing 4 or 5, then that's what we'll do to get the best one.
Jen?
I'll go back to my statement. I believe schools and the Board of Education members should be free from politics. There is, as I said, there's a cultural change taking place within our schools that is politically based and racially based. As we're looking at, quote, best candidates for positions, it's no longer based on what we define right now as what is best. It's a big term, what's best? Are we talking about their qualifications of excellency? Are we talking about what school they studied in? Are we talking about the color of their skin or their ethnic background? We have to be looking at, let me step back a minute. I worked a lot with teachers. I was in professional development for many years with Rochester City School, and even before that in Honduras as a consultant and starting schools, trilingual and bilingual schools. And then I worked for NWA as a consultant. In every situation, you always see like a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. A 1/3 of teachers that should always never be there. They're a danger with kids, out the door. You've got a 1/3 that are excellent. They go above and beyond. The students excel and the students grow tremendously. And then you got your 1/3, I call them, they're kind of like the wannabes. They're kind of looking at the ones that are natural teachers and can excel, but they don't know how to get there. So for me, looking at best candidates, it's a screening process that really has to do with the type of questions you're asking, as well as the experience they come from, and all the way down to observing their teaching and what they're able to do and what they're able to show. But a lot of that is out of the school board's hand. We just say the yay or nay once the hiring process has taken place. A lot of it's done behind the scenes and behind the screen on a computer at the BOCES level. That's my honest opinion.
in my work role, I do a lot of training. Now, I'm not a trainer or teacher by profession, but I've learned it. And when I first took on the position, first thing I had to do was a presentation and see if I actually had the basic skills to teach and convey information in a meaningful way. So let's say we're hiring and looking for the best candidate for a teaching position. Have them do a presentation, see how they come across. I provide references. How about hiring potentially a third party to do background checks? Again, the questions that are asked have to be looked at. Interview questions, I think, should be, some of them should be behavioral based, throw out real life scenarios to them, give them real life situations and see what their response would be and how they would handle that and resolve the issue. Again, the questions being asked are crucial, but I will always look to real life situations, how would you respond, and your ability, again, to convey information so somebody can actually learn.
Okay, Jen, what is your opinion of standardized testing?
Oh boy. I've worked a lot in progress monitoring testing as well as standardized testing. I was trained in Albany during the Common Core, and actually before that also did some training with the previous standards, and really realized how standardized testing scoring takes place. I've scored standardized testing for many years here in Monroe County as a lead trainer and scorer, and realized standardized testing is not going to give you too much information. Why? Because number one, the scores don't come back until well after the kid is home, summertime, following year, different building. Number two, they don't give you any data behind it. They don't tell you what the kid knew and doesn't know because they reuse those questions. So I don't really care for standardized testing. And number three, it's all up to the state to play with what they call the cut score. They can change the cut score in a win, which they did in 2013. They raised the cut scores that only 33% of the New York State kids, grades 3 through 8, could pass the ELA or math. So it's a game. So I disagree with standardized testing. You need good 3 data points and progress monitoring of students that show skills behind the score so that teachers can use those scores to modify their teachings to meet student needs.
Louis?
I take the position that they're useless. I think maybe that's what I'll take the position that they're useless. I'm not, yeah, waste of time. I'm not a proponent of it. I don't think that the standardized tests actually accomplish what they were meant for. And I just about an hour before I came here, I was online and I was coming across information that the Board of Regents is looking to make this standardized testing regime required within non-public schools as well. And that if the non-public schools don't get in line with this, that the current commissioner stated the state may withhold public monies from the districts. I mean, this is incredible stuff. So, that's my position.
Rich?
Standardized testing, I guess I'm opposed to that too, especially when they're forced on the schools, and to see that the testing should be done for different classes, different grades. The teacher know what they're, and grade each student on what they've learned.
Okay. All right, and last question we have here. I'm going to start with Louis. Would you support webcams in every classroom?
I'm a proponent of using webcams. Now, I think there's some privacy concerns involved, but you know what, like any other thing, that can be worked out and reasonable parameters set. But as a parent, how could you not want to know, or have to, if you want to, you don't have to, but if I want to, why can't I see what's happening within the classroom? My kid's in that school for a third of their life. I should be able to see what's going on there. So yes, subject to reasonable parameters on that, I am a proponent of that.
Rich?
I guess I'm within the reasonable parameters. The parents need to be able to see, and I think what it's going to do is get more awareness on the teachers of how they're teaching, because they know that the webcam's on, how they're teaching, how they're disciplining children, what they're giving out for work. So I think that they would be very supportive to have web cameras in that. And they need to be looked at by different people, whether it's principals or whatever, so we actually know what's going on in these classrooms.
Jen?
I know this is a yes, no, but it's a very dangerous situation in this day and age with technology in general, especially with hearing about social, environmental, financial credit scores coming, vaccine passports, you know, even digital IDs embedded in skin that we've talked about and some youngsters have already done. I know webcams are completely different, but it could become potentially dangerous because once on a camera, always on a camera, right? I see the positive that, you know, just like in the daycares where parents feel more comfortable that they can see their baby at any time and ensure their safety is very good. And especially in this day and age with what's happening in the schools, it would add that additional security, especially with comprehensive sexuality education that is seeping into our curriculum, that we would be able to see instead of agendas being hidden, especially in the sense of kids who are being exposed to transgenderism and their sexuality at a very young age. I've heard it in Webster as young as first grade. I have not heard kindergarten yet, but it could potentially be there, teaching them their pronouns and that not every girl feels like a girl and not every boy feels like a boy. I think a webcam would be definitely useful for parents to be able to see that. But then again, we'd also have to look at, could we go back and see what happened during their day? Would that be on tape? Would it be, you know, would it be stored? So there's a lot of things that we would have to consider, but for safety of children, could be a very good idea as well as, you know, looking at the culture.
I want to thank all three of you for going through that panel of questions. Would you be willing to take some, in the next 9 minutes or so, take some
I
questions
would
from the
like
audience?
peanut butter ice cream.
Peanut butter ice cream.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with a couple of questions, Rex? Do we have any questions we haven't covered? Barry?
Just a couple of comments. First, a question. You talked about your FOIL requests were denied. Did they give you a reason for denying them?
They give a standard canned answer. It's the same sentence that it falls under one of 3 broad categories. I mean, my latest one is from last week, and I was told that because the request is so extensive, and this was for curriculum based questions, a resource I was looking to see, they came back and said, because of the nature of the request and the amount of information will be April 18th, I can guarantee you right now, I will get, on April 18th, I will get the same standard one-sentence answer on why it's denied. It's under one of these 3 broad categories. How could everything is being asked for? It doesn't.
But they say that they maintain the records. They always say, we do maintain those records, but based on New York State educational law, blah, 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 and then they state the 3 possibilities that
This is where you're going to end up having to get an attorney.
Right. The next step, if you want to play this, is that you have to go to court.
Yeah.
Well,
But this is not where. Why is it coming to that?
Right.
I guess that's what infuriates me.
You know, one other thing, a comment on your webcams. While they're very useful and could be very beneficial, you're not going to be able to afford them. Because the cam itself is not the cost. It's the data storage.
Yeah.
And the companies that store it, it costs an arm and a leg for that. We're going through that. We've gone through that with our Webster Police Department. And it's very, very beneficial to have them, but the cost is enormous.
Frank, did you have a statement you wanted to read?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's candidate who couldn't make it, Jason Civic. And
Can you do it, Cameron, say his name again?
Jason Civic.
Seaver.
Seawick.
Stay right there.
All right. Right here. Let's see. And I'll surmise most of what he said. His name is Jason Seawick, and he's running for the Webster Board of Education. He was born and raised in Detroit, where his family relocated to Syracuse. when he was 12. He graduated from Fayetteville High School and attended the Rochester Institute of Technology with the BS in Business Management. Following his RIT career, he moved throughout the country and then relocated here to Rochester. His wife and his children moved to Webster in 2010, his 2 daughters, because, as he says, believes this is where life is worth living. He has 3 children enrolled in the school district, 9th, 7th, and 2nd grade. And he currently manages 8 districts in the northern U.S. and Canada for a privately held global organization. For the last 10 years, he's had blind faith in the Webster School District. That changed about 2 weeks back in March of 2020. After 15 months of asking questions, he decided to speak before the Board of Education on June 6th. He asked about a stack of unanswered emails and was basically told that they wouldn't be answered. Unfortunately, over 9 months later, the only thing that changed is that more unanswered emails were added to the stack. It is his belief that the Board of Education has failed to live up to several points of their board governing mission. These points include: they failed to promote values and positive and productive relations with the community, take responsibility for their own performance as a governing body, and practice the highest level of ethics and integrity. He spoke on June 6, 2020, and offered to help the Board of Education, but they never returned his calls or emails regarding his speech. The fact clearly illustrates that the Board of Education does not promote positive and productive relations with the community. The Board of Education is responsible for hiring and managing the superintendent. Under the Board of Education's management of former Superintendent Gamina, the district found itself embroiled in federal lawsuits and messy exits of both Mr. Gamina and other board members. The members of the Board of Education should be responsible for managing Superintendent Gamina, but have not taken accountability for their own performance as a governing body. After years of hosting Board of Education meetings on YouTube platforms, other internet platforms, the district refused to post a February 8, 2022 meeting where a parent was physically removed from the meeting. The Board of Education also removed a June 10, 2021 Board of Education meeting from its YouTube platform, citing the reasons of medical misinformation. That June 10th meeting has subsequently been posted on the BOCES platform. Hiding specific meetings from the community does not promote value, positive relations with the community, does not take accountability for its own performance as a governing body, and does not highlight the high level of ethics and integrity.
Fred, would you be willing to summarize a little bit?
Yes, I'm going to just summarize. In conclusion, he will participate in legislative committee. He will advocate for parents who want to have a choice in medical decisions for their children, choice in fundamental human rights. He will publicly and privately demand that the Board of Education be transparent in their decisions. Parents need to understand where the Board of Education stands on key issues, that they should be rooted with communication from the board. I will admit that while I am not familiar fully with understanding the process, I will make sure that the district is held to a high integrity and the same ethical standards that all boards should have.
Yes. Go ahead, yes.
Okay, do you believe the school board has the power and the role not only to create policies, but provide leadership establish benchmarks for administration, teachers, and all employees to be held accountable to show continuous improvement in every aspect of our school district, from test scores and academic results, buildings and grounds, transportation, sports, safety, transparency, fiscal efficiencies, to make our schools the best they can be. That's a question. Do you believe that? Do you believe that you can change, positive change?
Typically, the policies come from the district, the board reviews the policies, they discuss the policies, they can change some of the wording in the policies, and then they vote on the policies. Okay, those type of things. What you're proposing is more of a partnership between board and district of what it really should look like, as well as to make the district, put the district at higher standards in all areas of their organization. And that the board too needs to have high standards within their organization. So yes, I do agree.
I mean, there was a lot packed into
There was.
that question, so I don't know if I could hit every point directly. But yes, overall, I would agree with that, and I think accountability is one of the biggest things that you mentioned, and I just feel there's been a lack of accountability on a number of issues within the district. But again, part of accountability is, again, having a partnership with the community as well, and finding out what people are concerned about, and to try to address that within the powers that are granted to the board. I gotta tell you, until last summer, I didn't realize how much authority is granted to the board. But if you ask the board, it's not us, but well, yeah, it is. You know, I gotta tell you, the reason I got in this was for accountability, because I came in because of the issue with the prior superintendent. That was my whole reason for starting on this journey, you know? And I said, why are we paying out for bad actors? Where's the internal investigation? I don't even think we're done with that, so yeah, especially accountability.
Rich?
Yes, I do believe that we can do that. We should be responsible, and whatever we need to do to hold up the responsibility and hold people that are in the power responsible. That's the big thing. It comes from holding responsible for what they've done, and if it's not what we agree with, then we'll have to hold them there and get that changed. One way or the other, we'll have to do that.
Okay, so just a little bit after 8:30, do anybody ask any questions? John?
So the overriding theme tonight seems to be the lack of transparency within the school board, and specifically with the school district. And the way it's structured, from my understanding, is the superintendent basically works for the board. But in all actuality, from my experience in a different school district, is that a lot of the directive comes from the superintendent and is directed towards the board. And the boards normally are just agreeing with the superintendent, which is a major, major problem, because they're switching roles. So I guess my question is, how strong of a stance would you take to ensure that the district, specifically the superintendent, understands that he works at the pleasure of the board? Because if you're making any change, it has to start there. And you're seeing that already, because all your FOIA requests are being denied. And that's coming from the district. And I can pretty much guarantee you that the superintendent has read every single one of your FOIA requests.
Rich, you want to start?
Yeah, that's a good question. The superintendent, we've got to hold him accountable. We'll say, you know, maybe your salary should be up for discussion. Maybe we should do that. And if they know you're voting on a salary, or you know voting to re-elect them, say, I don't approve of what you're doing, and I'm not supporting you. That's the way you're going to get to a superintendent. You're going to hit him in the pocketbook. You're going to hit him with his support. They don't understand anything else. And that's where we got to go after them. And I'm all for that.
We'll go backwards.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I'm not an educational expert. I'm relying on the superintendent and the administrators to be doing the right thing. But as a board member, I have the responsibility and obligation to the community to educate myself so I can have the proper conversations with the superintendent. And yes, I didn't even realize that the superintendent is effectively working for the board, and I just feel like everyone, like you said, is like just in step with each other. Just everyone falls in line. If I truly believe, after I've informed myself and get all the facts and circumstances for whatever policy or decisions being made, that if I feel that it goes against what the superintendent or what other administrators do, I gotta voice that concern and do what is what I believe as my role as board member is to implement what is in the best interest of the school district. So yes, I absolutely feel I would be able to stand up and understand the relationship between the board and the superintendent.
Jen?
I also think that not enough questions are asked from the board. So yes, the school district brings presentations and specific things that need to be approved by the board, but they do it without questioning. I see it more as a dog and pony show. And look how great we are. Congratulations, yes, you did a great job. And I'm sure there's a lot of great things that we do need to celebrate in the Webster Central School District. But I think we do need to have that more of a partnership of ensuring, shouldn't say partnership, you're right, the superintendent works for the board. We need to be asking those questions. We need to become informed. So I think at this injunction right now, where there are 3 seats up, we need 3 people who can work together, because everybody can't be, you know, their gifts, their talents of what they bring to the board, they can't be everything in education, right? Or in finance, or in budgets, or in this, that, or the other. So we have to bring in those complementary, help me out there, skills and gifts that we each bring. And we're going to need to work together. It's got to be a partnership, especially between us 3, and then hopefully we'll make some inroads with the other board members, as well as the superintendent and those that come to present.
Great answer, thank you. Frank, why don't we end with Frank, because he's getting a little bit on the late side.
Just briefly, we talked about fundamentals not being, I guess, educated in the system. Things like math, reading, writing, history. And as a curriculum base, as a potential member of the Board of Education, how are you going to change that curriculum so that, one, those fundamentals can be implemented, and 2, parents have a little bit more say. And what I mean by that is, as a parent, I'm with 4 children, 2 in the school district and 2 in private school. I don't seem to be aware of what my children are studying. You're given a portal, you don't really know where they are in the curriculum. It's not like when we went to school where you're in chapter 1 and you're learning, you know, your addition, and chapter 2 you're learning your subtraction. Very, to me, appears to be not structured so that we know what they're being educated. There's very little homework in public school compared to my children that go to private school. There's absolutely no homework for elementary students. As a board member, how can you change that curriculum so that the things that we talk about, reading, writing, arithmetic, are being taught, these fundamentals are being taught, I guess in a way that private schools do, unfortunately.
So unfortunately, being a public school, you don't have that leeway of choosing too much of your own curriculum. Rochester City, we were able to do that because it's so big, and we were able to, you know, I was able to choose the math program and then train the teachers in the math program to support kids and raise our scores there. But a lot of it is driven by the federal and New York, specifically New York State. But, you know, everything that's happening culturally right now is also at the federal level. know that your kids are being taught to read, write, math, etc. But it's who's teaching it and what are the underpinnings that they're teaching it through. And a lot of the teachers might even go online and grab lesson plans from other teachers on paid teachers. What's the name of that? You know, there's different websites where teachers pay teachers, where teachers can pay other teachers for their lesson plans. So they've got the skeleton of what they need to be doing, but then they have some leeway of how to teach it. Other schools might say, oh, we're all using these resources, etc. So it's going in, number one, asking them, what are you teaching? How are you teaching it? Can I see? Probably won't get it. But also know that what the standards, the social justice standards and the political culture that they're bringing in is just that. It's asking questions in a different way. So they're still teaching, let's just say, Esperanza Rising is a book that they read, I think, in 5th grade. Okay, it's about an immigrant, a child who leaves Mexico, comes up to California, is a migrant worker because of the Civil War in Mexico. Great story if you ever read it. This is the first year I'm seeing teachers in specific schools, one in particular because I went and checked. You know, they took it from how wonderful that this young girl escaped with her mom to the United States and the benefits that they got from the United States. They changed the questions to how does it make you feel, to it changed it to more racist type question of how she was an immigrant, you know, that she was a migrant and she wasn't paid well for her work and she had to live in a shack and those type of things. So now they're taking it through a different lens. Does that make sense? But they are still teaching math, reading, writing, etc.
Rich, go next.
Yeah, I guess I agree with that. I guess I would also want to try to hold the teachers and principals to get the parents more involved, whether it's a monthly thing or a bi-weekly thing where we're sending home, this is what your child's learning, this is what it is. And if we have to give incentives for the teachers to give homework, we can do that in different ways. I think that's very important. We need to do that. We did that when we were children, and we need to have that more curriculum for the children at home from teachers, from the schools, and send it home to the parents. If it's bi-weekly, here's what your child is learning. Here's what it is. Here's what their assignments are. Please help us with this. They can be fun, they can be different, and they can be challenging.
I asked the same question when I started getting involved and going to these meetings and speaking with other people. And I think you're talking about effectuating the big changes. And I started to realize how, as Jen mentioned, this is coming at the state level and filtering down. So you got to look beyond your ability to be a voice for your local area. You got to get a movement together and start going at the county and state level. And I didn't realize how much of this democratic machinery is in place to really try to be a suppression against the changes that I think some of the parents want to see. So again, I think it becomes a bigger movement to get that type of change.
And I'm going to add on, because we've been trying to get this going for more than a year. We need parents, we need grandparents, we need taxpayers to get involved. A school board itself is not going to do it completely. We need the community behind the kids and the schools to get this done. And it's been very frustrating on my part because, you know, people just don't show up. I was just like, what is it going to take to get people to finally realize what's going on in our schools and for them to be there? I hope it's not too late.
I think you're making a great point, but I go back to the lack of transparency, which leads to the apathy of a lot of these parents. They have no idea what's going on in these schools. So for you to, on the board level, be an advocate for the students to speak out to the parents, I think that would be a great, great effort moving in the right direction to open up and tear down that wall of transparency for the parents. That's just my opinion.
There's always been a strong matter of trust. Growing up in this town my entire life, there's always been a big matter of trust that our school district was going to teach our kids.
That's right.
That the school board was going to make sure this was happening. That trust is
It's gone.
gone.
I just want, it's about 8:45. I want to encourage you all to stay and ask questions of the candidates, but I think we should end the public part of this, but do stay if you have any other questions you want to ask. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight. This was a great experience, and I thank you.